in the quiet suburbs of Crestwood, a young woman named Amelia believed she had finally found a life of simple, ordinary love. 6 months pregnant and deeply in love with her husband Ethan, she endured the constant scorn of his wealthy family, who saw her as nothing more than a penniless girl from the wrong side of the tracks. They had no idea who she really was. But one cold afternoon, in the city's most exclusive baby boutique, their scorn turns into a horrifying public spectacle. What they don't know is that the woman they are trying to break is more powerful than they could ever imagine, and her secret is about to bring their entire world crashing down. Amelia Thorne traced the condensation on the kitchen window with a fingertip, a small, wistful smile on her face. Outside, the autumn leaves of Crestwood were a riot of gold and crimson, painting the quiet middle-class street in warm hues. Their 2-bedroom rented house, with its slightly creaky floorboards and a garden that was more weeds than roses, felt like a sanctuary. It was simple, it was real, and most importantly, it was a life she had chosen. A life where she was just Amelia, a former librarian, a loving wife, and soon a mother. Her husband, Ethan Thorne, walked in, wrapping his arms around her from behind and resting his hands on her burgeoning belly. He smelled of coffee and the crisp morning air. "What's got my 2 favorite people so captivated?" he murmured, kissing the side of her neck. "Just watching the world go by." She sighed contentedly, leaning back against his solid frame. "Thinking about how lucky I am." "I'm the lucky one," he insisted, his voice earnest. "You know that, right, despite everything." Everything was the unspoken word that hung in the air whenever they talked about his family. The Thornes were Crestwood royalty, their name synonymous with a successful regional construction empire built by Ethan's father, Robert. They lived in a sprawling mansion on the other side of town, a place of polished marble, cold gazes, and suffocating expectations. To them, Amelia was a colossal disappointment. She had no pedigree, no trust fund, and no connections that could benefit the Thorne dynasty. She was the librarian their Ivy League-educated son had inexplicably fallen for and married after a whirlwind romance. The matriarch, Beatrice Thorne, made her disdain for Amelia painfully clear. Every Sunday dinner was a trial by fire. Beatrice would comment on Amelia's simple dress sense, her lack of knowledge about the latest stock market trends, or her preference for novels over society galas. Each comment was a perfectly sharpened dart, aimed to remind Amelia that she didn't belong. "Don't let her get to you, Ames," Ethan would always say on the drive home. "She's just from a different generation. She doesn't see you like I do." But Amelia saw the way Ethan's shoulders tensed in his mother's presence, the way he'd offer a weak defense before inevitably falling silent. He loved his mother, and he was terrified of her disapproval. That fear Amelia knew was a chasm between them. What Ethan and his entire family didn't know was that Amelia's simple life was a meticulously crafted illusion. The name she had been born with wasn't Amelia Evans, the fabricated identity of an orphan who'd put herself through state college. Her real name was Amelia Sterling. She was the sole heir to Sterling Enterprises, a global conglomerate with holdings in technology, finance, and real estate that dwarfed the Thornes' local construction business into utter insignificance. The Thornes' mansion could fit inside the foyer of her family's New York penthouse. After her parents' tragic death in a private jet crash when she was 18, Amelia had inherited it all. But the world of corporate takeovers of sycophants and fortune hunters had felt like a prison. She'd watched friends get betrayed by people only interested in their proximity to wealth. She yearned for something genuine. So with the help of her family's most trusted advisor, the fiercely loyal Arthur Finch, she had created a new identity. She'd moved to a city where no one knew her, taken a quiet job at a library, and lived on a modest salary, determined to find someone who would love her for her heart and mind, not her bank account. And she had found Ethan. He was kind, charming, and when it was just the two of them, he made her feel like the most cherished woman in the world. She had fallen for him so deeply that she had convinced herself she could live in this fabricated world forever. Telling him the truth felt like a betrayal of the very foundation their relationship was built on. How could she explain that the financial struggles they'd argued over the broken-down car, the budget for the baby's nursery, were a complete charade on her part? He would feel like a fool, and their love, which she treasured more than any fortune, would be tainted. The ringing of her phone shattered the morning peace. The caller ID flashed Queen Beatrice. Amelia's smile tightened. Ethan saw her expression. Let it go to voicemail. She'll just keep calling, Amelia said, forcing a cheerful tone. She answered, putting the phone on speaker. Good morning, Beatrice. Amelia, I trust you're not still lazing about. Beatrice's clipped, icy voice filled the kitchen. I have decided we are going to La Petite Chérie this afternoon to select a suitable registry for the baby. My friends will expect a certain standard, and we can't have them thinking the first Thorne grandchild will be swaddled in polyester. Amelia's heart sank. La Petite Chérie was the most ostentatious, ridiculously expensive children's boutique in the city. A single pair of baby booties there cost more than their weekly grocery budget. Oh, that's very generous, Beatrice, but we were really hoping to keep things simple. We found some lovely things at a little shop downtown. Nonsense, Beatrice scoffed. You wouldn't know quality if it slapped you in the face. This is not up for debate. And I've also invited someone to help us. You remember Chloe Preston, don't you? Her taste is simply impeccable. Amelia's blood ran cold. Chloe Preston, Ethan's ex-girlfriend from college. The woman Beatrice had openly championed as the one who got away. Chloe was everything Amelia wasn't: blonde, polished from a family with a comparable if smaller fortune to the Thornes. Inviting her was not a kind gesture. It was a calculated act of cruelty. Mom, that's not appropriate, Ethan interjected, his voice firm for once. Why would you invite Chloe? Oh, don't be so dramatic, Ethan. Chloe and I are dear friends. She has wonderful insights into what a family like ours needs. It will be helpful. 2:00. Don't be late, Amelia. And for heaven's sake, try to wear something presentable. The line went dead. The silence in the kitchen was heavy. Ethan turned to Amelia, his face a mixture of apology and frustration. I'm so sorry, Ames. I don't know what she's thinking. I do, Amelia said softly, her hand instinctively cradling her belly. She's thinking about how to remind me that I'll never be good enough. She looked at him, her eyes pleading. Ethan, you have to say something to her. You have to tell her to stop. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture she knew meant he was stressed and conflicted. I will. Of course I will. But you know how she is. It's better to just get through it. We'll go smile, let her feel like she's in control, and then we'll come home and laugh about it. It's not worth the fight. His words, meant to be placating, felt like a small betrayal. It was always easier to appease his mother than to defend his wife. Amelia swallowed the bitter taste of disappointment. She knew she had to go. To refuse would only give Beatrice more ammunition, painting her as ungrateful and difficult. She would go, she would endure, and she would count the minutes until she could return to her simple, safe world. She had no idea that the carefully constructed walls of that world were about to be blown apart, and the storm was gathering at the gilded doors of La Petite Chérie. The air inside La Petite Chérie was thick with the scent of lavender potpourri and old money. Everything was cream gold and pastel blue. Sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, glinting off crystal chandeliers and illuminating displays of hand-stitched cashmere onesies and miniature velvet rocking horses. It wasn't a store. It was a museum for the children of the 1%. Amelia felt a familiar wave of unease wash over her. It wasn't the opulence that bothered her. She had grown up surrounded by far greater luxury. It was the pretense. This world which Beatrice and Chloe navigated with the effortless grace of sharks in their natural habitat felt alien and suffocating. She smoothed down her simple navy blue maternity dress, suddenly feeling frumpy and out of place, just as Beatrice had intended. Beatrice and Chloe were already there, perched on a plush settee like a pair of regal vultures sipping sparkling water from delicate flutes. Beatrice was immaculate in a Chanel tweed suit, her silver hair perfectly coiffed. Chloe, a vision in a silk blouse and designer jeans, looked Amelia up and down with a pitying smile that didn't reach her cold, calculating eyes. "Amelia, darling, you made it," Beatrice said, her tone dripping with false sweetness. "We were just discussing cribs. The Versailles collection is simply to die for. Hand-carved mahogany with 24-carat gold leaf accents." She gestured towards a monstrously ornate crib that looked more like a papal throne than a place for a baby to sleep. It probably cost more than Ethan's car. "It's very grand," Amelia managed, forcing a polite smile. "But I was hoping for something a little more understated. Simpler." Chloe let out a tinkling, condescending laugh. "Oh, Amelia, you have to think about the optics. The first Thorne grandchild can't sleep in something from a chain store. It sends the wrong message." "What message is that?" Amelia asked, her voice quiet but firm. "That his parents love him for who he is, not what he's surrounded by." Beatrice's smile tightened. "The message is that his family has standards, something you seem determined to ignore." She stood up, gliding over to a rack of tiny outfits. "Now let's look at a coming-home outfit. Chloe, dear, you have such an eye for these things." For the next hour, Amelia was subjected to a masterclass in psychological warfare. Beatrice and Chloe moved through the store, picking up exorbitantly priced items and discussing them as if Amelia wasn't there. They talked about the importance of Italian leather shoes for a newborn who couldn't walk a sterling silver rattle that was a family heirloom in the making, and a stroller collaboration between a high-fashion house and a German engineering firm. Every suggestion Amelia made was immediately shot down with a condescending remark. "Oh no, dear. Cotton is so pedestrian. We need Sea Island cotton at the very least. A wooden high chair. How utterly rustic. No, it must be the transparent acrylic one, so much more chic." Ethan, who had arrived a few minutes after Amelia, stood awkwardly by the door, trying and failing to steer the conversation towards something more reasonable. "Mom, maybe we should look at the price tags," he suggested weakly at one point. "Don't be vulgar, Ethan," Beatrice snapped without looking at him. "Price is not a concern when it comes to my grandchild." Amelia felt a growing sense of isolation. She watched Ethan, hoping he would put his foot down, draw a line in the sand, and defend their right to raise their child as they saw fit. But he just fidgeted, offering placating smiles and non-committal shrugs. He was a spectator at his own wife's humiliation. The situation escalated when Chloe picked up a delicate, hand-embroidered christening gown. "This is it, Beatrice. It's perfect, classic, elegant. It's the kind of thing that gets passed down through generations. It's beautiful, Beatrice agreed, her eyes gleaming. She turned to Amelia. We'll take this, of course. Amelia looked at the tag discreetly. $5,000 for an outfit a baby would wear for 2 hours. It was obscene. Beatrice, that's incredibly generous, but we can't accept that, Amelia said, her voice strained. It's far too much. Nonsense, it's a gift, Beatrice said dismissively. It's not just the money, Amelia insisted, her patience wearing thin. It's not us. We want our child to grow up with grounded values, to understand the worth of things, not just the price. Chloe scoffed, stepping closer. What would you know about values? From what I hear, your entire life has been about latching onto people with more than you. First a scholarship, then a man with a promising future. This is just the next logical step, isn't it? Securing the Thorne inheritance for your child. The accusation, so blatant and venomous, struck Amelia like a physical blow. She felt the blood drain from her face. She looked at Ethan, her eyes silently screaming at him to intervene, to say something to stop this. Ethan cleared his throat. Chloe, that's out of line. It was the weakest defense imaginable. There was no anger in his voice, no outrage. It was a polite reprimand, like telling a child not to run indoors. Chloe just smirked, emboldened by his weakness. Is it? Or is it the truth everyone's thinking, but is too polite to say, Beatrice just wants to ensure her grandchild has the best of everything, something its mother clearly can't provide and doesn't appreciate? That's enough, Amelia said, her voice trembling with a mixture of hurt and rising anger. You know nothing about me. I know that you showed up out of nowhere and trapped a man who was destined for so much more. Chloe hissed, her voice low and menacing. You're a leech, Amelia, and sooner or later everyone is going to see it. The store had grown quiet. A sales associate hovered nervously nearby, pretending to adjust a display of baby bonnets. Beatrice watched the exchange with a look of smug satisfaction. This was exactly what she had wanted. She had orchestrated this confrontation to break Amelia, to prove to Ethan that he had made a terrible mistake. Amelia felt the sting of tears behind her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She would not give them the satisfaction. She looked at her husband, the man she had given up her world, for the man who was supposed to be her partner and protector. He stood there frozen, his face pale, trapped between the woman he married and the woman who raised him. And in his silence, she felt a profound and devastating crack form in the foundation of her love. I need some air, she whispered, turning to leave. Her hands were shaking. The weight of her secret, of the double life she was leading, pressed down on her, making it hard to breathe. All she had ever wanted was love, pure and simple. But in that moment, surrounded by a fortune that was a pittance compared to her own, she had never felt so utterly poor. The storm had not just gathered. It had broken, and she was standing in the heart of it, completely alone. As Amelia turned to walk away, her legs unsteady, Beatrice stepped forward, blocking her path. The older woman's face was a mask of cold triumph. Running away, Beatrice said, her voice loud enough for the other patrons in the boutique to hear. How typical. You can't handle a simple discussion about what's best for your own child. This isn't a discussion, Amelia retorted, her voice shaking but gaining a steely edge. This is an ambush, and I will not be a part of it. She tried to step around Beatrice, but Chloe moved to her other side, hemming her in. The two women stood like prison guards, their expensive perfumes mingling in a cloying, suffocating cloud. Don't be so dramatic, Chloe purred, picking a piece of imaginary lint from Amelia's dress. We're just trying to help you. It must be so overwhelming trying to fit into a world you're not accustomed to. All these choices, all these prices. She let the last word hang in the air, a deliberate insult. A well-dressed woman browsing nearby glanced over her expression, a mixture of curiosity and pity. The sales associates were now openly staring. Amelia felt a hot flush of shame creep up her neck. This was a public spectacle, and she was the main attraction. "I am perfectly capable of choosing items for my own baby," Amelia stated, her jaw tight. "And I don't need help from you." "Oh, I think you do," Chloe said, her voice turning sharp and cruel. She gestured around the store. "You walk in here in your sensible little dress, looking at things you could never possibly afford. Are you hoping that if you just stand near them long enough, some of the class will rub off? Or are you just trying to figure out which items you can pressure Ethan into buying so you can sell them later?" The accusation was so vile, so utterly baseless, that it momentarily stunned Amelia into silence. Beatrice seized the opportunity, addressing the store manager, who was now cautiously approaching. "Danielle, I do apologize for the scene. My daughter-in-law is under some strain. She's not used to this kind of environment. I'm afraid she may be feeling a little lightheaded." It was a masterful move, painting Amelia as not only poor, but emotionally unstable. Danielle, the manager, gave Amelia a nervous professional smile. "Of course, Mrs. Thorne. Can I get you a glass of water, ma'am?" What she needs is a reality check. Chloe snapped, her patience for the charade gone. She snatched a glass of sparkling water from a nearby tray, and with a flick of her wrist, accidentally, sloshed its contents down the front of Amelia's navy dress. The cold liquid soaked through the fabric instantly, and Amelia gasped, stumbling back. The dress, now dark and wet, clung uncomfortably to her baby bump. It was a petty juvenile act, but in the context of the public setting, it was utterly debasing. "Oh, clumsy me," Chloe exclaimed with theatrical shock, though her eyes danced with malicious glee. "I'm so sorry." "That's it," Ethan finally said, his voice cracking with a mix of anger and panic as he rushed forward. "We're leaving. Chloe, that was uncalled for." "Oh, relax, Ethan," Beatrice said, waving a dismissive hand. "It's just water. It will dry. Amelia is being overly sensitive." But it wasn't just water. It was the final stinging drop in an ocean of humiliation. Amelia looked down at her ruined dress, at the smug faces of the two women who despised her, and then at her husband. He was holding out a hand to her, but his eyes were darting around the store, more concerned with the audience than with her. He wanted to defuse the situation, to escape the embarrassment. He wasn't defending her honor. He was managing a public relations crisis. In that moment, something inside Amelia, something she had been carefully protecting, finally shattered. The fantasy of their simple, perfect life evaporated, revealing the ugly truth beneath. She had made herself small and powerless for this man, and when she needed him most, he was not her shield. He was just another bystander. With a newfound, chilling calm, she ignored Ethan's outstretched hand. She looked directly at Beatrice, her voice low and steady, devoid of the tremor it held just moments before. "You have no idea what you've just done." Beatrice let out a short, sharp laugh. "Is that a threat? From you, don't be ridiculous. What could you possibly do? Complain to Ethan? Cut up my credit cards for this registry." The store manager, Danielle, looking deeply uncomfortable, stepped between them. "Perhaps we should all just take a moment. I think you should be careful who you're speaking to." "Danielle," Chloe interjected, pointing a manicured finger at Amelia. "This woman is clearly unstable. For all we know, she could be trying to cause a scene to get something for free. You should probably check her bag on the way out." The suggestion that she was a potential shoplifter was the final unforgivable blow. The humiliation was complete. It burned in her cheeks and coiled like a snake in her stomach. Amelia didn't say another word. She met Ethan's panicked gaze one last time, and what he saw in her eyes made him flinch. The warmth, the adoration, the gentle love he took for granted, it was all gone. In its place was a vast, cold emptiness that mirrored the Arctic chill in her voice. She turned on her heel, her back ramrod straight. She walked past the displays of ludicrously expensive baby clothes, past the gawking customers and the nervous staff. She didn't run. She walked with a slow, deliberate grace that was more powerful than any outburst. Every head turned to watch her, this heavily pregnant woman in a soaking wet dress, leaving a trail of stunned silence in her wake. When she reached the heavy glass doors, she pushed them open and stepped out into the bright, indifferent afternoon sunlight. She did not look back. She took out her phone, her fingers moving with unshakable purpose across the screen. She selected a number from her contacts, a name Ethan had never seen, and pressed the call button. The phone was answered on the first ring. "Arthur," she said, her voice as clear and hard as a diamond. "It's me." There was a pause on the other end, then a voice calm and deeply respectful. "Amelia, is everything all right?" "No," she replied. The city sounds of Crestwood fading into a dull hum in her ears. "I'm done. I want you to come here. Right now. And I want you to bring everything. It's time for the Thorns to learn who they've been dealing with." Less than 15 minutes later, a sleek black Rolls-Royce Phantom purred to a stop in front of La Petite Cherie, its presence on the quaint, boutique-lined street as subtle as a thunderclap. The car was so profoundly out of place that it brought traffic to a near standstill. Pedestrians stopped and stared, pulling out their phones to take pictures. Back inside the boutique, the atmosphere was thick with a strange mix of residual tension and awkwardness. Beatrice and Chloe were attempting to resume their shopping, their voices artificially bright, but the energy of their victory had dissipated. Ethan stood by the window, pale and agitated repeatedly, trying to call Amelia's phone, only to be sent to voicemail each time. The store manager, Danielle, hovered nearby, unsure of what to do. The boutique's glass door swung open, and a man in his late 50s stepped inside. He was dressed in a bespoke Savile Row suit that fit him like a second skin. His silver hair was neatly combed, his posture was impeccable, and he exuded an aura of quiet, unassailable authority. This was Arthur Finch, the CEO of the Sterling family office, and the man who had been Amelia's guardian mentor and fiercest protector since her parents' death. He was followed by two other individuals in similarly sharp business attire, a man and a woman who carried leather portfolios. Arthur's gaze swept across the store, coolly assessing the scene before his eyes landed on Beatrice and Chloe. He then glanced at the large dark stain on the floor, where Amelia had stood, and his expression, already stern, hardened into granite. "May I help you?" Danielle, the manager, asked, approaching him hesitantly. "I'm here to see my employer," Arthur said, his voice calm but resonant, commanding the attention of everyone in the room. He walked directly towards the small group. Beatrice looked him up and down with a disdainful frown. "I believe you're mistaken. We haven't hired any new staff." Arthur ignored her completely. His eyes locked onto Ethan. "Mr. Thorne, I am Arthur Finch. I am here on behalf of my employer and your wife, Amelia Sterling." The name hung in the air, electric and foreign. Ethan just stared, his mind struggling to process the words. Sterling, I don't understand. Her name is Thorne. It was Evans. Evans was a name of convenience, Arthur stated flatly. A name she adopted to live a life of peace and anonymity. A life she hoped would allow her to be loved for herself, not for her name or her net worth. It appears she was tragically mistaken. Chloe let out a derisive snort. Sterling. What is this, some kind of joke? Did she hire an actor to come and scare us? How pathetic. Arthur turned his piercing gaze on her. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. Miss Chloe Preston, daughter of Edward Preston of Preston Real Estate. Your father's company is currently seeking a $60 million bridge loan from North Star Bank to finance your new condominium project, the Summit at Crestwood Heights. Is that correct? Chloe's smug expression faltered. How do you know that? I know that, Arthur said, opening his portfolio with a soft click. Because Sterling Financial Group is the majority shareholder of North Star Bank. As of 10 minutes ago, on the authority of Ms. Sterling, your loan application has been permanently denied due to character concerns regarding your company's associates. He slid a document across the counter to her. Here is the official notification. Chloe's face went white as a sheet. She snatched the paper, her hands trembling as she read it. Arthur then turned his attention to Beatrice, who was watching him with a mixture of disbelief and dawning horror. Mrs. Beatrice Thorne, your husband's company. Thorne Construction was recently awarded the exclusive contract for the infrastructure development of the new Sterling Technologies corporate campus being built just outside this city. It is, I believe, the largest contract in your company's history. A company maker, I believe Robert called it. Beatrice's jaw went slack. The Sterling campus was the talk of the town, a multi-billion-dollar project that was going to transform the regional economy. That contract, Arthur continued, his voice dropping to a glacial chill, contained a standard morality clause. Given your public harassment and assault of a senior executive and principal owner of Sterling Enterprises, namely your daughter-in-law, you are in breach. The contract is hereby terminated effective immediately. All Thorne assets and personnel are to be off-site by morning. He placed another document in front of her. Our legal team will be in touch regarding the recovery of our initial mobilization payments. No, Beatrice whispered, shaking her head. No, this can't be. Oh, but it is, Arthur said. And finally, this charming little boutique, La Petite Chérie. He looked at Danielle, the manager, who seemed to have shrunk by several inches. A lovely establishment. So lovely, in fact, that Ms. Sterling's private equity firm, Sterling Capital, acquired the parent company that owns this retail chain 6 months ago. As the new beneficial owner, Miss Sterling is exercising her right to terminate your franchise agreement due to your staff's failure to ensure a safe and respectful environment for all customers. Particularly, he added with a pointed look, the owner. The room was utterly silent, save for the sound of Chloe's ragged breathing. The power dynamic had not just shifted. It had been annihilated in a nuclear blast of wealth and influence so vast it was incomprehensible. Ethan finally found his voice, a strangled, desperate sound. Where is she? Where is Amelia? Arthur looked at him with an expression of profound disappointment. She is where she should have been all along, surrounded by people who protect her, not by those who stand by and watch as she is humiliated. He turned to his associates. Please ensure all parties receive their copies, and have security escort Mrs. Thorne and Ms. Preston from the premises. They are no longer welcome here. 2 security guards who had entered discreetly behind Arthur moved forward. Beatrice looked as if she might faint. Her entire world, her social standing, her family's fortune, her legacy had been dismantled in under 5 minutes by a man she had mistaken for a chauffeur. As the guards led a protesting Chloe and a shell-shocked Beatrice out of the store, Arthur turned back to Ethan. The cold professional mask dropped for a moment, revealing a flicker of something almost paternal. She loved you, Mr. Thorne. She gave up a world you cannot even begin to imagine just for the simple hope that your love was real. She wanted a husband, not a bodyguard. But she at least deserved an ally. And you failed her. You failed her and your unborn child. Arthur turned and walked towards the door, his footsteps echoing in the cavernous silence of the now tainted boutique. Ethan stood alone, a receipt for his failure in his hand, surrounded by the opulent baby things he could no longer afford, his mind reeling with the name that changed everything: Amelia Sterling. He had not married a poor librarian. He had married an empress, and he had just stood by and watched as the world threw mud at her throne. The fallout was immediate and catastrophic. For Ethan, the world tilted on its axis. He stumbled out of the boutique into the harsh sunlight, the name Amelia Sterling echoing in his mind like a mantra of his own stupidity. He called her again and again. Voicemail. He sent a frantic barrage of texts. Ames, please. I don't understand. We need to talk. I'm so sorry. I love you. The single grey check mark next to each message told him his number had been blocked. He drove home to their small rented house in a daze. The creaky floorboards he used to find charming now felt like a mockery. The simple furniture they'd picked out together at thrift stores seemed like props in a play where he was the only one who didn't know his lines. Her scent lingered. Yeah, lavender and old books, and it was an agonizing reminder of the woman he had lost. Every object was a testament to the lie she had lived and the truth he had been too blind to see. The worn-out sofa where they'd cuddled the chipped mugs, they drank coffee from the stack of books on her nightstand. It was all part of the Amelia Evans costume. A costume she had worn for him. His phone rang, jarring him from his stupor. It was his father, Robert Thorne. His voice wasn't angry. It was hollow, defeated. Ethan, what did you do? Dad, Don't, Robert cut him off. I just got off the phone with Arthur Finch's legal department. It's real, son. The Sterling contract is gone. They're calling in our credit lines. Her bank froze our operating accounts. We're ruined, Ethan. Decades of work gone. Because your mother couldn't be civil to your wife. Because you let it happen. The weight of his father's words crushed him. This wasn't just about his marriage anymore. He had allowed his mother's petty cruelty to detonate a bomb that had vaporized his family's legacy. He spent the rest of the day in a frantic haze trying to piece things together. A quick search for Amelia Sterling opened a digital Pandora's box. There she was in photos from years ago, on the arm of her father, the legendary titan of industry David Sterling. Pictured at charity galas in Paris, ribbon-cutting ceremonies in Tokyo, and economic forums in Davos. Her face was younger, her eyes guarded, but it was unmistakably her. The articles called her the vanished heiress, the billion-dollar ghost, speculating for years about where she had gone after her parents' death. She hadn't vanished. She had been hiding in plain sight with him. Meanwhile, Beatrice and Chloe were experiencing their own personal apocalypses. Beatrice arrived home to find her husband, Robert, a man she had dominated for 30 years, looking at her with pure, unadulterated contempt. The shouting match that ensued was legendary, its echoes felt by the household staff, who suddenly began polishing their resumes. The foundation of their marriage, built on wealth and social status, crumbled now that both were gone. For Chloe, the humiliation was more public. The news of her father's loan denial spread through the tight-knit real estate community like wildfire. The Summit project, her pet endeavor, was dead on arrival. Her father, a proud and ruthless businessman, was apoplectic. The phone call she received from him was not one of fatherly concern, but of cold commercial fury. She had cost him a fortune and made an enemy of a financial power he didn't even know was in the game. Her social standing, propped up by the illusion of influence, evaporated overnight. Friends stopped answering her calls. Party invitations were rescinded. She was a pariah. The story, as it always does in wealthy circles, began to leak. Whispers turned into gossip, and gossip turned into a full-blown scandal. The tale of how Beatrice Thorne and Chloe Preston had publicly humiliated a pregnant woman in a baby boutique, only to discover she was the secret billionaire who owned the store. The bank and the contract that kept their families afloat was too delicious not to share. The Thornes became a laughingstock, a cautionary tale whispered over champagne and canapes at the country club they would soon no longer be able to afford. That evening, consumed by a desperate soul-crushing guilt, Ethan drove to his parents' mansion. He found his mother sitting alone in the cavernous living room, a glass of untouched brandy in her hand, staring blankly at the dark fireplace. "He's going to leave me," she said, her voice brittle. "Your father, after 40 years, he said I've destroyed everything." Ethan felt a flicker of pity, but it was quickly extinguished by the memory of Amelia's face in the boutique. "You did, Mum," he said, his own voice hollow. "You destroyed it. You pushed and you bullied and you tormented the kindest, most gentle person I have ever known. For what? Because she wasn't rich enough for you." Beatrice looked up at him, her eyes red-rimmed and filled with a venomous fury. She lied to us. She deceived all of us. She played us for fools. No. Ethan yelled, his control finally snapping. She wasn't playing us. She was testing us. She gave up everything to see if someone could love her for who she was, not for what she had. She gave me that chance, and I failed. But you couldn't stand the thought of her being happy. You had to tear her down, because she wasn't from your world. The irony is, her world is so far above yours, you can't even comprehend it. You were a bug trying to insult a star. He sank into a chair opposite her, the fight draining out of him, replaced by a vast, empty sorrow. I love her, Mom. I love her so much, and I let this happen. I stood there, and I let you and Chloe tear her apart. And now she's gone. I've lost her. I've lost my child. The realization hit him with the force of a physical blow. His child, a son or daughter who would be born into a world of unimaginable privilege, a world he was no longer a part of, a child who would know him only as the man who failed their mother. The reckoning was not just financial, it was moral. Ethan Thorne finally understood the true nature of his weakness. It wasn't just about his fear of his mother. It was a fundamental flaw in his own character. He had valued peace over principle, comfort over courage. He had loved Amelia, yes, but he had not cherished her. He had not protected her. And in the world of the truly powerful, a world, Amelia Sterling inhabited, such failures were not easily forgiven. He had lost his wife, his family's fortune, and his self-respect in a single afternoon. The price of his silence had been everything. While the Thorne family's world imploded, Amelia Sterling's world was being meticulously reassembled. She wasn't at one of her family's sprawling estates in the Hamptons or a secluded villa in Lake Como. She was in a place that felt more like home than any of them, the penthouse apartment atop the Sterling Enterprises headquarters in downtown Crestwood, a sleek tower of glass and steel that she had commissioned herself. The apartment was a masterpiece of minimalist design, all clean lines, neutral colors, and breathtaking panoramic views of the city. Yet it felt sterile, impersonal. It was a fortress, not a home. For the first few days, Amelia did very little. She ate the meals her private chef prepared. She listened to the updates from Arthur about the swift and total dismantling of the Thornes' financial standing, and she spent hours sitting by the window, one hand on her belly, watching the tiny cars move along the streets below. She didn't feel triumph or vindication. She felt a profound, aching emptiness. The simple life she had craved had been a beautiful dream, but the ending was a nightmare. The man she loved had failed her in the most fundamental way. The revelation of her identity wasn't a gotcha moment. It was the tragic admission of a failed experiment. She had wanted to be loved for herself, and the test results were in she wasn't. Or at least her husband's love wasn't strong enough to withstand the slightest pressure. On the fourth day, Arthur Finch found her in the expansive home office, staring at a blank computer screen. "The Thorne accounts are settled," he said gently. "We've left them with the mansion and a modest pension for Robert. They won't starve, but their influence is gone." Amelia nodded, not looking at him. "And Ethan? He has been trying to reach you through every conceivable channel. He's left messages with my office, with the legal team, even with the building's concierge. They are remorseful. Remorse is easy when you've lost everything," she said, her voice flat. "It's courage that's hard." Arthur stood there for a moment, his posture softening. "Amelia, what he did was unforgivable. But you loved him. This pain you're feeling, locking yourself away, will not make it disappear." "I'm not locking myself away," she said, finally, turning to look at him. For the first time in days, there was a spark in her eyes, not of joy, but of resolve. "I'm preparing. I'm about to be a single mother. I am the head of a global corporation. I don't have the luxury of falling apart." From that day on, a change came over her. She stopped grieving for the life she had lost and started building a new one. She summoned her top executives, men and women, who hadn't seen her in person for over 2 years. When she walked into the boardroom, her pregnancy evident beneath a tailored but comfortable dress, a hush fell over the room. They saw the same brilliant mind they remembered, but there was a new hardness in her eyes, a new economy in her words. This was not the vanished heiress. This was the queen returned to claim her throne. She delved into the company's projects with a ferocious intensity. She reviewed quarterly reports, challenged development strategies, and made decisions with a clarity and speed that left her board members breathless. She was particularly focused on the Sterling Foundation, the company's charitable arm. She tripled its funding, directing a massive new initiative to build and support shelters for single mothers and victims of domestic abuse. She poured her pain into purpose. Ethan, meanwhile, was living in his own personal hell. He had moved out of their rented house, unable to bear the memories, and was staying in a small, soulless corporate apartment his father had kept. He wrote letters to Amelia every day, long, rambling pages filled with apologies, explanations, and desperate pleas for a second chance. He knew she would never receive them, but he had to write them. He tried to understand her. He thought about the sacrifices she had made. She who could have anything in the world had chosen to live in a drafty house, to worry about grocery bills, to wear a simple dress from a department store. She had done it all for him, for the chance at a normal life. And he had repaid her by allowing his mother and his ex-girlfriend to humiliate her over the price of a baby blanket. The shame was a physical thing, a constant weight in his chest. Realizing that apologies were meaningless without action, he started to change his life. He refused any further financial help from his father. He sold his expensive car, the one his mother had bought him as a graduation present. He took the menial entry-level job at a rival construction company that his father's now tarnished name could get him a site assistant, fetching coffee and running blueprints. The work was hard, the pay was low, and his new colleagues looked at him with a mixture of pity and suspicion. But for the first time in his life, he was earning his own way. He was becoming the man he should have been all along. One evening, after a grueling 10-hour shift, he saw a news report on the TV in a bar. It was a local feature on a surprise visit to a new women's shelter downtown. The benefactor was making an appearance, and then she was on the screen. It was Amelia. She looked regal, confident, and breathtakingly beautiful. She moved with a purpose and grace that stole the air from his lungs. She was speaking to a group of women, her hand resting on her stomach, and she was smiling. It was a real smile, one he hadn't seen in so long. "Every person deserves a safe space," she was saying to the reporter. "A place where they are protected, valued, and given the strength to build a new future for themselves and their children. Strength isn't about how much you have. It's about what you do when you have nothing left." Watching her, Ethan finally understood. Amelia wasn't a damsel in distress waiting to be rescued. Her strength wasn't in her billions. It was in her character, the very thing he had failed to show. She was building a new world for herself and their child, a world founded on real strength and purpose. And if he ever wanted to be a part of it, even on the outermost fringes, he couldn't just say he was sorry. He would have to become a man worthy of her. The path to redemption was long, and he had only just taken the first step. 3 months passed. The seasons turned, and the chill of autumn gave way to the crisp, cold air of winter. Crestwood was decorated for the holidays. But for Ethan, there was no cheer. His life had found a new, monotonous rhythm wake before dawn work, a physically demanding job, come home to an empty apartment and write another letter to Amelia that he knew she would never read. He had lost weight, and his hands, once soft from an office job, were now calloused and rough. He was tired, but it was a clean kind of tired. For the first time, he felt like he was building something real, even if it was just a small piece of his own shattered self-respect. He kept track of Amelia through the news. He saw the announcements from the Sterling Foundation, the glowing profiles in business magazines, hailing her return as a visionary leader. Every image of her poised and powerful was a knife to his heart. She was thriving not in spite of him, but in his absence. He was a footnote in her story. His chance, when it came, was not one he sought. One Saturday, he was volunteering with a crew from his new job, helping to do some pro bono repair work at the very women's shelter Amelia had opened. He was on a ladder, patching a section of drywall, when a familiar black Rolls-Royce pulled up outside. His heart hammered against his ribs. Amelia stepped out of the car, followed by Arthur Finch. She was heavily pregnant now, her due date clearly approaching. She wore a simple but elegant cashmere coat, and she moved with the slow, careful grace of late pregnancy. She hadn't seen him. He almost scrambled down the ladder to hide, but something stopped him. Hiding was what the old Ethan would have done. He stayed where he was, his heart pounding, and continued his work. He could hear her voice as she toured the facility, her tone warm and engaged as she spoke with the shelter's director. Eventually, her tour brought her to the hallway where he was working. "And the repairs on this wing are coming along wonderfully," the director was saying. "A local construction company has been donating their time on weekends. Their men work incredibly hard." Amelia stopped, her eyes scanning the work, and then she saw him. Their gazes locked across the hallway. For a long moment, the world seemed to stop. He saw a flicker of surprise in her eyes, then something unreadable. Not anger, not pity, but a deep, quiet watchfulness. He looked a mess. He was covered in drywall dust, his hair was matted with sweat, and his clothes were spattered with paint. He looked nothing like the polished man she had married. He slowly climbed down the ladder, his heart in his throat. Arthur Finch took a half-step forward, his hand instinctively moving as if to shield her, but Amelia subtly raised a hand to stop him. "Ethan," she said. Her voice was calm, neutral. "Amelia," he croaked, his own voice raspy. I didn't know you would be here. This is one of my projects. I visit often," she replied. She looked at his hands, at his work clothes. "The director tells me you're a volunteer." "My company is," he clarified. "I'm just one of the crew. It's a good place. They do important work." The small talk felt absurd, like two strangers making conversation in an elevator. An uncomfortable silence fell between them. He had 1,000 things to say, 1,000 apologies rehearsed in the lonely darkness of his apartment. But looking at her now, so serene and self-possessed, words felt cheap and inadequate. So instead of speaking, he reached into the back pocket of his dusty jeans and pulled out a worn, slightly crumpled envelope. It was the first letter he had written, the one he had carried with him every day, like a penance. He held it out to her. "I know you don't want to hear from me," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "And I don't expect you to read this. I don't expect anything. But I needed you to have it. It says everything I was too weak and too stupid to say before." She looked at the envelope, then back at his face. She saw the exhaustion in his eyes, the genuine remorse etched into the new lines around them. She saw a man who had been stripped of his privilege and had not, to her surprise, crumbled. Slowly she reached out and took the envelope. Her fingers brushed his, and the brief contact sent a jolt through him. "The baby is due in 3 weeks," she said softly, changing the subject. "It's a girl." Tears sprang to Ethan's eyes, and he hastily wiped them away with a dusty hand. "A girl," he whispered. Is she healthy?" "She's strong," Amelia said, and a small, sad smile touched her lips. "Like her mother." It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't an invitation back into her life. But it was something. It was a door, once slammed shut and bolted, being cracked open just a sliver. "I want her to have a father, Ethan." Amelia continued, her gaze unwavering. "But she needs a father who is a good man. A strong man. Not a man who is afraid of his mother or of what people think. A man who stands up for what is right, no matter how hard it is." "I'm trying," he said, his voice breaking. "Amelia, I swear I am trying to be that man." She held his gaze for a moment longer, then gave a slight nod. "I'll read your letter," she said. She turned to Arthur. "We should go." As she walked away, Ethan stood rooted to the spot, watching her go. He hadn't gotten his wife back. He hadn't fixed the damage he had done. But he had been seen. She had seen his effort. And for the first time in months, a tiny, fragile seed of hope began to take root in the barren wasteland of his heart. The road ahead was uncertain. A shared love had been shattered by a terrible betrayal. But now, with the impending arrival of their daughter, there was a reason to build something new from the wreckage. Not a return to the past, but a new beginning, founded not on a beautiful lie, but on a difficult, hard-earned truth. It would be a future built on her terms, guided by her strength, and he knew with every fiber of his being that he would spend the rest of his life trying to be worthy of it. That afternoon wasn't a fairy tale ending, but the start of a new, more honest chapter. Ethan's journey was far from over, and Amelia's trust was not something easily won back. But with a child on the way, their story was no longer just about them. It became a story of redemption, of earning a place in his daughter's life, and of proving that a person can truly change. Amelia, now a powerful leader and a soon-to-be mother, would navigate this new path with the same strength and grace she had shown all along, building a future on her own terms. What do you think? Can someone who has failed so spectacularly ever truly redeem themselves? Can trust once so completely broken ever be rebuilt? This story is a reminder that our true character isn't shown in our best moments, but in how we react when we are at our worst. If this story moved you, please hit that like button. Share it with someone who loves a powerful comeback story, and be sure to subscribe to our channel for more real-life drama that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Drop a comment below and let us know if you think Ethan deserves a second chance.